Go.
What's up, y'all? Loan Officer Mark coming to you. Welcome to Real Talk with Brian Poduska. I am so excited to introduce our new topic of the month and my special guest, J.R. Wheeler from Simplify Enterprises. J.R. has a wealth of knowledge, but we are talking strategic partnerships and how to leverage your business. I am so excited. Let's get ready for the show.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for that great intro, Mark. And thanks for introing the topic of the month, which is strategic partnerships and how to build them. We'll get a little bit deeper into that in today's topic of the month. And real quick, first, let me introduce myself. If you haven't seen the show before, my name is Brian Poduska. I'm the owner of Real Property Management Focus, where we focus on your real estate investments. So we are a full-service property management company, all the way from sales to the management piece, and then selling on the backside. So not to get too deep in our business, but please do, Lennon, if you can, bring on our two co-hosts for the day, Mark and Kendra. How are you guys doing?
Hey,
Man,
doing great.
Living the dream.
I made it through the end of the month, man. That is some months all I can ask for. So it is a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have a sunny day. I know the East Coast has been dealing with a lot. I know Louisiana and the South has been dealing a lot with the hurricanes. So I'm excited. It's a good day. It's been a good week. Kendra, how are you doing?
Doing great. And the same feeling is mutual. Just really glad to get through the end of the month. Sometimes the last week is the worst, the last day, and the first week is the worst. And it's been a fun, eventful summer. So very glad and looking forward to a little slow down the fall.
Well, same here as far as timing of the month. This is always the first week of the month is always an interesting time for property management. So, yep, it's this holiday weekend couldn't get here any quicker. Certainly welcome.
Came out of nowhere for me, honestly. I feel like August was a battle, but then it hit September, and now it's like, where did the year go? We've got 120 days left. All of a sudden, where are we at in our goals and in our business? And I think that always is what makes it an exciting time of the year. And I think September is an opportunity for all of us to really create something in Q4 and potentially, and some would argue, Q1. So I think we all got to take a breather this weekend because we all need to come back with that added energy.
I like that. I like that approach. All right, hey, Mark, go ahead and bring on your guests if you wouldn't mind introducing them, and Lennon, bring them on in.
Well, man, I love how we do this show live. I wasn't able to bring on JR on the last show that we did last month. Kendra, we had a little health issue with her guest this month. So I am so excited that we get the entire show to ourselves with my very good friend, JR Wheeler. JR, man, I've known you since I first got to Dallas, which crazy enough, I guess that's now, 3-4 years.
It went by fast, brother. Went by way too fast.
You have been a resource that I go to and rely on. You are what I would really consider a strategic partner. And so I'm ever more excited to have you weigh in on the topic. I know I could go on about you all day, but give us the kind of 120 second bio of how you went from where you started to where you're at today.
Awesome, brother, and honored to be here. Massively grateful, just overflowing with it today. And Mark, I 100% agree. You are the strategic partnership. I literally would not be here if it wasn't for your strategic partnership. So, short story, serial entrepreneur. Ever since I found out I was an entrepreneur, starting at Cutco, sophomore year of college, ended up running an entire state for that company, to today where I have multiple businesses going, have the honor and the pleasure to do what I love on a day-to-day basis while doing it with the people that I love. And so, and I'm all over the place. Some people say I don't do the Cutco knife thing anymore, though I do have some of my best friends in the world in that company. The the most recent business I've started was a federally licensed firearms manufacturer out of Waxahachie, Texas. And so financial services, guns, you name it, I've had my hands in it, even a little bit of telecom. And so it's just been an absolute pleasure working on my businesses and partnering with a whole mess of different folks in different industries. And so I'm just honored to be here, folks. And thank y'all for having me.
I love it. Well, we're going to keep out of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but I know there is a lot that we can go into what you just said. Brian, man, you're getting to know JR for the very first time. You are very much the moderator for the entire panel. So let's get it started, man. What's your first question for my man, JR?
Well, before we start hitting the questions, let's give our sponsors a little bit of love. And if you wouldn't mind pulling one of them up. All right, we'll do Liberator Health Insurance first. So Greg Holberg is the owner of Liberator Health Insurance. He's also one of our co-hosts on the show. And he does a deal of the week every week. It looks like we've got a little bit different setup this week. But so in a recent Consumer Report article revealed that GoodRx sells data to Google, Facebook, and others. Because of this, Greg no longer recommends GoodRx. They have an alternative that's just as good, but does not sell your data. So if you want to learn more about that, look up Mr. Greg Holberg. Contact him at 214-886-4688 or visit him at his website, which is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And then our second sponsor, Mr. Tom Rowe, who is the owner of Wines with an Appeal. So Wines with an Appeal is a company dedicated to assisting people fundraise for their favorite nonprofit organization. They provide a fun and educational program to entertain your donors and increase their wine knowledge that could potentially cost the fundraiser nothing. Tom is awesome. He's one of our strategic partners, if you will. It's the theme of the month here, and he does a really educational, really fun fundraising event. And like it says here, the fundraiser could potentially cost you nothing. So if you want to get in touch with Mr. Tom, you can email him at tom@wineswithanappeal.com or call him at 214-621-5216 for more information. All right. So that being said, got to give our sponsors some love. JR, thanks again for being on the show today. Absolutely. We love, basically what we do is we try to spotlight entrepreneurs and business owners. And it sounds like your background is awesome in that you're a serial entrepreneur. So that's the perfect sort of guest that we like to have on the show. So let's, I guess, first question to the group, just level set on what you consider to be a strategic partnership.
Ladies first.
Girl, I forgot to introduce you, and I am so sorry. Kendra, ladies first. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on Brian's question. And I apologize.
That's quite all right, Mark. So I'm Kendra Strawn. I'm with Fair Texas Title. I am our sales rep, our sales exec in both the Plano and the North Dallas office. Our North Dallas office is a satellite of our Plano office. We have 11 locations throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and we truly are a full-service title company. We close pretty much everything, but also where we really differ is the fact that our goal is to become very valuable to our strategic partners so that they grow their business and in turn send us all of their business. And so that they look to us to figure out where their holes are and where they need help. So I am very fortunate to work for a company that really understands real estate, the industry, the market, and really wants us to thrive in that. So to me, your strategic partners just aren't your like top 10 or your power 20 or I work with a lot of realtors and lenders, mainly real estate agents, but to them, most of the time they'll say, oh, I need my power 10, my power 5, or I need 3 of this, 3 of this, 3 of this. You don't just need those people. You need to know who you're referring. You need to know something about them. You need to be able, because if you are sending someone electrician or an HVAC person, you need to kind of have an idea. Is this a good HVAC person? I mean, I have an example of the fact that a very dear friend sent me one that she's used before. Um, but he basically was just about to try to take us for about $4,000, and he'd unplugged the condenser unit to the in the big HVAC in the AC unit out downstairs, and was telling us that the upstairs, what was dropping was from that unit. It was really from the other unit. It did need to be replaced, and we knew it. But he was about to cost us $4,000 more, and he was lying at us, you know what? So the issue was, she just didn't realize, even though when they came to her house, they didn't try to take her, but he tried to take us. And I knew better and called around. But a strategic partner just isn't somebody that you can refer out when you need it. If you're in our industry, you do need people in a variety of different settings, because you've got to be able to help your buyers and your sellers. However, a strategic partner is really somebody that to me, it's somebody that thinks about of me and says, you know what, I need to call Kendra because she can help me with my postcards, and because I need more business and I want to be able to send her more business. Or it's also somebody that knows that I'm going to be there to sponsor, to help with them with an event they have, and I'm going to follow through with what I say I'm going to do. And it is hard follow through sometimes. We all know that. That's probably one of the areas we struggle with most, as I do at least, is follow through and remembering to follow through with everyone. I've got multiple lists everywhere. But honestly, to me, a strategic partner isn't just somebody who, oh yeah, I can refer you out, or they refer me business here or there. It's somebody that really kind of, they feel like they have a vested interest in you. They feel like they have a vested interest in your ability and your being able to get there and do better. Like, to me, I mean, I have a vested interest in our real estate agents and our lenders in the next 6 months, making sure that they're ready to hit the ball, just hard as ever in the springtime. Now, mind you, our years are different, and it's been very different since COVID. So we really haven't had a typical selling season. But if we really take a look at it, it's like Mark said, it's like, now is the time to go on vacation this weekend, which we are, thank goodness, and come back strong and plan for the last quarter and to hit the first quarter hard. So I talked a lot. I appreciate you letting me talk, but I do believe a strategic partner is really someone that you end up having some type of vested interest in one another. So.
Well, that is a great tie down. And as you were talking, I all of a sudden started really thinking about the differences or lack thereof of a strategic partnership and a marriage, and where you're really bringing the best of you to the table, knowing that the best of you is going to help that best of that partner. And you're doing it because you want what's best for the whole, right? And so London and I have talked about it, and he'll be mad at me if I don't bring it up. There is quite the difference between what we can say is a strategic partner, but then what others may call a vendor who provides a very valid service and a very crucial role that is needed for each of our businesses. And then the difference of lead sources and referral sources. And so, JR, man, you are in one of the most difficult, but one of the most powerful industries in the world, right? Because if it's the most powerful in America and they've got more money than the banks, that tells us something about what's going on. So I guess for you, man, I mean, you're building this thing literally from the ground up, which is super impressive to see from the outside. I wish I had the cojones to do that on the mortgage side. But talk to us a little bit about the strategic partners that you have in your life and that you're building and nurturing, and the ones that you see are the ones that are going to help take you to that next level.
Absolutely. And so, and bro, it's a wild ride, needless to say. And so the industry that he's referring to is financial services, and that's a kind of catch-all. I started an independent life insurance and financial consulting business in January of 2020. After leaving the bigger firm, having the senior VP-ship and all that good stuff, I went independent in January of 2020, much at the request of my clients and my strategic partners and other folks that loved having me in their life. And that's one of those things that it's honoring, and it'll bring a tear to your eye to think that, you're looking at what else can you do. As a serial entrepreneur, I spent a good time in the financial services industry helping hundreds of people directly and thousands of people indirectly through an agency I had built at the previous company. And you look up and you go, man, what was it all for, right? And those strategic partners are those that in that moment of question, when you go, who am I right now? Your strategic partners know who you are. And they say, no, here's what you're going to do. And they're in the trenches with you with mud under their fingernails, and they're digging and pushing hard and making sure that they're there for you. That's really what I define a power, not just a power partnership, but a strategic partner where you can say, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z by date. And they go, sweet, how can I help you get there? It's not a question of if they're in there with you. It's how are they going to help you, and what can they do to leverage their networks to happen. One of my first mentors when I got into networking in Dallas is a guy by the name of Chuck Kopdish. He runs East Dallas Networking, and he had a saying that just kind of melted into you, and you got kind of, it's like one of those things you threw off, but it's like, if you build a relationship, the business will come. And that is at the heart of it. What is a strategic partnership? Very much like Kendra was saying, these are people you got to know. You got to know that you know, not just that they're good, but that they're going to do great. Because if that goes sour, it comes back on you, and it could burn a bridge. And so these are people that you're in the trenches. You want to help them get better, but at the same time, you need to know that they're there. They actually know what the heck they're talking about. So in my industry, especially just looking at, like, if I was to talk to a brand new person trying to build a life insurance agency, for example, I would tell them, look, the biggest thing you can talk to are people that need your product. Well, the great thing about life insurance is that if you understand it, everyone needs your product at a number of different times. But the three big things are when they buy a house, when they have a kid, and when they get married. So your powerful relationships will come in those that are around those three sources, which is what led me to meeting Mark one day. I believe it's on the Shaper app, if I'm not mistaken, brother.
Man, you just had to bring that up.
And hey, that's networking for the lazy, but I love it. The heart of it is, Brian, everyone on this podcast, I believe, is in the real estate industry. So everyone here is a potential strategic partner, given enough time, money, and energy put towards those relationships, right? And so, you look at the amount of clientele that I've talked to sending to Mark, because, they'll come to me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, we're talking about life insurance, right? But one of their goals may be that I discovered in a needs analysis is that they really want a home. They really want that asset. They really want that. And so helping them and financial consulting them leads me many oftentimes to Mark saying, hey, I have a guy in my back pocket that I trust, I love, know, believe in, and he will help you get there. Actually, before this call, we were talking about a mutual client that I led and kind of some of the decisions they're wanting to make. And the beautiful things that when you build that strategic partnership, it's all cyclical. It all comes back. And that same client was like, oh, well, Jared's really busy now with all the things he has going on. I don't necessarily think that this is worth his time. And Mark was like, no. This is what you got him in your back pocket for, and encouraging them back into the cycle with me to have those conversations. And so, I can list off the industries. I can say, yeah, I'm really great with loan officers. I'm really great with credit repair organizations. I'm really well, and talk about vetting those. We can go down that rabbit hole if you want. But in general, there is no shortage of strategic partnerships if you just know really what you do. And I have this conversation with people all the time that if you find yourself, all the rest of it kind of aligns. And brother, you talk about marriage and strategic partnerships. If that's a proposal, I mean, I accept, brother. That's what I'm talking about. And so, and my business partner is my wife. So I can't say that marriage and business don't go together. And people go, how can you do that? Like, you just got to know who you are in the relationship and it works out. And not without its challenges, obviously. But I say that I agree with you there, man. Building strategic partnerships is very much like dating in the very beginning. And sometimes you're like, nah, I'm not into it. Bye. And, at the same time, you get some gold in them dark hills. And so it's kind of like kissing a million frogs to find your prince or princess, right? And so, but it's totally worth it. And those relationships are the ones that keep you going in your darkest times. So I don't know if that answers your question, brother, but hopefully that's
that was awesome. There is so much that we could all talk about within that. And it's so funny because as you brought up your very good partner, I was thinking, I mean, I know your wife and I am very much invested in what you guys have going on. And there is a level of that relationship where we care about what's going on and we actually want what's best for one another. And so I know Kendra and I have these same types of relationships with a lot of real estate agents. And one of the things that I keep talking about with real estate agents and real estate professionals in general is strategic partners don't even necessarily need to be within your industry, right? Like my barber, who I've had the same barber, shout out to Ty, by the way, Men's Hour over on 121. I've used him since I got to Texas in 2018. He sent me multiple clients. I know his family. I know his dynamics. I care about him and what's going on in his journey as an entrepreneur himself, and the same way as he does about me. And so with that being said, I think that is a good thing for us to talk about is these strategic partnerships. A lot of the time, they're not in the most obvious places. So Brian, Kendra, JR, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're spot on, Mark. And, if you have congruent businesses, that's a bonus. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? It's, you look at the key success factors for strategic partnerships, it's got to be, a win-win for both sides, a value match. So again, it doesn't have to be the same, same industry per se, but you want to align on your values and, so those, I think that's a great, the great add. Clear communications, that's always an important thing as well. So if you have that symbiotic relationship with somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to be in that same industry.
Brian, can I jump in real quick? I want to address that because I think it's a really, really important topic that you're on right now. And it's about, I think the biggest mistake most of us make are trying to form these relationships within our own industry and not thinking outside the box, especially in real estate. What is one thing that every person in every industry needs? A place to live. So what if my strategic partnership was with a small company that employed 35 to 500 people? What if I became a strategic partner with the CEO or owner of that business? If I make him an asset to me and I'm doing something for him, he has then influence to a certain extent over 35 to 500 people. That's how expansive it can actually be. The other thing is when we're all just trying to build partnerships within our niche, within our industry, so is everybody else. It becomes more competitive. If I'm the first real estate agent that goes into this corporation, and I know I won't be because I know how competitive that is, but regardless of what it is, if I am the first that's reached out to them, they're probably going to listen to me more than some of the people within my own industry would. Because once you build those relationships, if you're loyal and you're a true strategic partner, you're just not jumping to the brightest, shiniest object every week. So,
I mean, I gotta agree with the big brother that we can't see, but love hearing every time he speaks. There's what keeps going on, or what I keep repeating in my head, and it's funny to say, but it still holds true for me. It's our fraternity motto, which was give expecting nothing thereof. And I think if we approach our business knowing that if we come with value first and what can we give, and not actually expect or require something in exchange for it, and we actually act in that person's best interest, we are all reciprocal beings. Like, that's the bottom line. So in the way that I've been approaching my business and how I've grown all of this is really just acting in everybody that I like and respect and have in my life, acting in their best interest. And by doing that, at the end of the day, because we're reciprocal beings, the business comes. And so I think we need to look at these different strategic areas for growth, but at the same time, we need to come with what is that value that we are bringing? What is it that would put this person, this strategic partner or prospects for a strategic partner, why would they refer me? What am I bringing to the table? Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of that comes back down to really creating these times for ourselves to really reflect and say, am I bringing fluff, or is this legitimate value? And can I actually quantify it? Can I then articulate it? And I think once you can articulate that, that's where all of a sudden you have that story that you can bring to the masses, and all of these strategic partners, all of a sudden they just start coming out of the blue, right? Mm-hmm. So that I just had to get that out. I'm sorry.
Well, and there's a couple of things you touched on during this that I wanted to just kind of go back to. And one of them is that looking right in your backyard for your referral partners and for your strategic partners. Those are your friends. Those are the ones that know what you do for a living, and they know and they hear and they see. And if they see a consistent message from you, be it on social media, be it how you hold yourself and how you discuss what you do, they're going to come to you and ask for questions. They're going to ask your advice. And that's one thing I can say is that I got into the career business late. I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. Was very fortunate, lucky, had 3 sons within 4 years. And so it's kind of hard for daycare.
You got 3 sons on stage, so I've been managing.
That's what I do right now, and one in behind, but on backstage. And so I've only been truly working, I'd say full-time the last 10 years, 12 years. And honestly, it's taken some time, but I have friends, I cannot tell the number that out of the blue, someone will call or text or IM and say, hey, we're going to refi. Can we close with you? Or we're going to refi. Is this a good deal? Can you tell me a little about the lender or what I'm looking for? Or can I send you the docs I look at because I can't understand any of this and they're just talking a foreign language? Can you at least, and I can give you basic. I can't advise you legally, but I can give you basic info. And it's surprising that when you get that consistent message out to people, Facebook, friends, whatever, they're going to look at you as a strategic partner when they go to refi their home, or they go to buy their home or sell their home, or they go and they're looking for an insurance carrier. They're looking for someone in the fields everyone else is in. That's what happens. But on the other side of that is something you touched on about how you treat your referral partners and almost becoming that vested interest and also that friendship. And just that it goes back to something that, Lyndon founded all of us on, was relationships and being relational. And, I cannot tell you the number of sales execs that I know that will get in, or business development people that will call out people for not closing with them and will call out people for not sending them the contracts. And I got to tell you, it doesn't bode well for them. And they may think it does, and they may think that, they're going to guilt somebody into sending them a contract, but everybody figures out what they're doing. And then we hear about it and they end up going to somebody else who basically is just there to be that relationship and that friend and that person to help them build their business. They don't have a vested interest in me, but I have a vested interest in them. And I know that the business will come, and some people may not want to work with me, and that's okay too. But the issue is if they're not right for office or not right for me, fine. But it's understanding how human nature is and knowing that you're going to get a lot more with honey and a lot more being sweet and trying to figure out what their needs are in front before your needs. So that's the other thing that we see, both of those sides that we see in our title, in our industry. So.
You bring up a question for me now. At what point or another do we, as we are cultivating this relationship, at what point, if we realize that we are the ones that are bringing the intent and the strategy and the growth, and it's not going both ways.
Can I address?
Yeah, go ahead. At what point do we back away?
First of all, in order to do that, Mark, you've got to set the realistic expectations up front. Okay, this is what I'm going to, and you're right. If you go into a meeting like that and say, this is what I expect you to do for me, they're out of there. But if you go in with several value adds, because we all know in any referral-based business and world, you never have referral exchange for referral exchange. It's impossible. So you need to have some additional value add so that if you don't have a bundle of referrals to share, you're giving value somewhere else. But when you go in to start that strategic partnership, you need to have your own plan. Here's what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is when I'm going to do it. And this is what we should expect to happen. Now, Mark, what about you? And now that goes back to him. What is he going to do in exchange for that? Are we going to build a partnership, or is this going to turn one-sided? That's the only way you'll ever have accountability, is to have some sort of formal understanding. We are so casual in our relationships. And then we wonder why they don't work out, they don't produce consistently. And then we get resentful because we feel like we're doing more than they are. But we never.
So we're sounding a lot like marriage again. And so
it sounds like a lot like successful marriages. I don't know about the unsuccessful ones.
Well, unsuccessful, right?
Well, and honestly, you have to ask for the sale.
Well, I don't know if I lost this.
And the ask may be different per person, but it's the basics of, if you're not asking, they're not going to give sometimes.
Well,
you said something, Kendra, about asking for the sale. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got to change our mindset that it's not always about the sale. We've got to ask for a certain commitment.
Yes.
But here's the thing. I may create a strategic partnership with someone that never refers a client to me ever. They may not be in an industry that can actually do that, but they may be able to connect me with people that do. So that's their
value. That's the
right.
Value
that's their value. But I think that
you don't have to ask for the sale then. And that's just a term we use loosely, ask for the sale. Make sure you can close the deal. And usually there's not an issue with having to ask or they understand that the expectation's there, and you've already set that expectation, like you mentioned, Lyndon. You set that in the beginning. I think it's when you get, in our situation, we'll get realtors that will want us to do a lot of work for them, and they don't send contracts in. Sometimes they don't have them. Sometimes they're new. Sometimes they're what we call sharing the love with other title companies. But, it's like, if I have a realtor that isn't sharing the love and they want me to do all kinds of work for them, I'm probably going to put them pretty low on the totem pole of everybody else who is sending contracts and get that work done for them first, until I see that, they're going to start sharing their contracts. They're going to start sending us work. So
I think a part of that also can come down to coaching and talking about and creating these moments in time. And that's what I was going to ask JR to bring him back into the conversation and the rest of the group. What are these? I mean, what have we found is the right frequency to meet with our strategic partners to ensure that we are staying and dating our partners and making sure that we're actually taking that time? Again, I can't believe I'm the one that keeps talking about taking time to reflect, but what is that? Because I know, I mean, a lot of us, we do these at the end of the year, right? We do these at the beginning of the year. And I've been going through an entire change and really taking it down into like and internalizing the 12-week year and the flipping of the calendar to saying we've got quarters and that quarter is your year, and how do we plan out that quarter? So I guess, would you guys say quarterly dates and reflection times with your partners, is that overkill? Is that something that I'm bringing up that you guys haven't thought about, or is that something that you're already doing in your business?
I think it goes down to the relationship, right? We're dating. And so it's about being intentional with them, because 99% of people, I'd say that generally, I don't have the statistic. It just reminds me of like when one of my first mentors got into, when I was in the Cutco, they said, believe it or not, JR, people aren't thinking about knives after you leave. And I go, no, not unless, no, never. And in the same way, people aren't thinking about life insurance like every single day. Last year was an anomaly where everyone thought they were going to die. So that was like a bumper year for life insurance. But the insurance world.
You're laughing, Kendra.
Hey, that's appropriate, actually, surprisingly enough. But you have these wild conversations with people, and brother, I think you and I follow about once a quarter at least. And then we'll obviously follow up on any relationships we're introducing. But I want to go back to something you said before you get into the frequency of follow-up. It's really easy to follow up when there's reciprocity, I think is the word. Excuse my linguistics, but when you're
That's
constantly,
the word I was looking for earlier.
The reciprocity, when hey, I have this client I need to talk to you about, it's really easy to get on someone's calendar and be able to debrief about what's going on, how can we help one another. And it's easier to follow along with, say, an Adam Grant, The Give and Take. If you never read that book, read Adam Grant's Give and Take. It gives you kind of a litmus test on identifying who are givers, takers, and matchers. But the idea is that you always, always, always want to give first, and givers always win in the long run because they're that person that's on the top of the mind. And that's really the game. I was thinking, I want to go back because there was something that was said that talking about don't be afraid to build strategic partnerships with folks outside of your own industry. And as a serial entrepreneur, that's 99% of the way I find new businesses that I enjoy and love and want to explore, even if it's on a part-time basis. And so my point to all of this is that nothing great was ever done individually. Nothing great was ever done by one person all by themselves. There may be an outlier here or there. I haven't heard of them. But that's because the best things happen when two or more come together, right? Where we can lock arms and build relationships. And I love what Lyndon was saying about, like, even though this guy doesn't give me anything, he can still be a strategic partner, right? So all that to say, man, bringing it back to your question of frequency, I don't think the frequency is as important. If you're in it for them, you'll be finding ways to follow up with them. And I think you'll be very, very intentional about, hey, I got to talk to Mark. I got to talk to Brian. I got to talk to Kendra, whatever it may be, they'll be top of mind when you need it. And so that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I agree in that. I don't know if you can really set a frequency or a time limit. It all kind of, to me, boils down to communication, just in general, right? The key word is communication, and whether that's a weekly thing, monthly, quarterly. I think it probably is a two-way street. And as long as you have that relationship with your strategic partners, Mark, to answer your question, I don't know if you need to set a timeline on it or a time frame.
Kendra, what do you think, girl? You're too quiet. You must be you're in a self-reflection mode right now. I can see it.
Well, I'm letting other people talk. I don't want to hog the conversation. Honestly, I think it's more or less just being aware of when you have or haven't spoken with somebody, and that it's somebody that you're used to keeping in touch with and keeping up with, that just be aware of when you haven't talked to them to follow up with them. And if the follow up could be as easy as a text, an IM, or a, phone call, it's best, a phone call for sure, or an email, just anything just to make sure that you're keeping in front of them. And yeah, I think it's more or less just being aware of who you need to make sure that you are staying constantly in front of, and speaking with them, and making sure that they need something from you, or just finding out why you haven't heard from them if they haven't reached out to you, or if they haven't, I can look up and just like Mark can and figure out where the agents, if they've been working lately. Well, if someone hasn't been working, you don't see contracts. Well, is everything okay? Have you, changed careers? Is there something? Just reaching out and keeping in front of mind. So it's not really a time period.
I think that there is. I mean, I think you have to have. I mean, that's why they call it strategic partnerships, right? You got to have a strategy. Part of strategy are timelines, and part of timelines is communication. And I think that whether you, Brian, and I sit down and go, okay, so here's our plan. Here's what we're going to do. Now, when are we going to follow up and see where we are in the development of our strategy? It's not ever going to be the same with everybody. But I think if you go, okay, well, when I remember, I'm going to call you. Well, guess what? We're going to get busy and not call. That's what's happening to everybody right now. It's not that people don't want to follow up. They get so preoccupied and they get so much on their plate, it gets pushed to the side and forgotten. So I think that having a formal commitment and strategy. Name one organization that is not better with processes and routines.
I am so glad I didn't have to be the bad guy, so that way I could come back in and agree.
That's awesome.
There is, if we are literally going to talk about strategic partnerships, like, we've got to look at this as such, right? And we've got to create these points in time where we can actually take a 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, in some cases, depending on the business, it could be a day or two, to take away all of the BS and the noise, which we are all just freaking bombarded with. And everybody is busier. And it feels like over these last couple of years, like, my clients are busier than they were the year before. And everything is more difficult. And anything worth putting time into is something that it's got to be a strategic partnership, right? Because we, as I was saying before we went live, we all have the same limited resource, which is time. And if we aren't willing to invest the time into that partnership, we could be giving them all the money in the world through our referrals and through what we do and our partnership. But if we aren't intentional in it, is that a strategic partner? Or are we now talking about a vendor relationship or a referral or a lead source relationship, right? So what do you guys, I'm London, big brother, thank you, man.
No problem. That's what I'm here for.
And actually, what both of you said is true. It's being intentional and time blocking to talk, to email, to text those individuals. I think where I'm coming from is I don't do it on a quarterly basis. I literally have list running of who I need to reach out to, who I haven't heard from lately, or who I haven't talked to in the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Someone that I know that is on my radar that I need to reach out to. So I think that is where we are constantly looking at who we haven't heard from, who we need to get in front of, who we need to hear from, who brought us in, say, 5 contracts in the last 2 weeks, and I need to make sure I reach out to them and send them something, or that I take them to lunch. So I think in where I am, I'm constantly doing that. It's a never ending cycle with us. It's a constantly trying to follow up with people. And I've got, whiteboard that luckily my other office is kind of hidden so no one sees exactly who I need to follow up with, just to keep, so it's right in front of my face. So yes, you are correct. It is more of you've got to set that time aside to do it. And we have a couple sales execs that do amazing. That one of them, he literally on Mondays and Fridays texts all his agents just to check in, see how your weekend went. Did you get any contracts? You need anything before the weekend starts? Same. And that's one of my goals. Is that something I want to start doing and plan and will is getting better at just reaching out to them, even just via text, because they don't. This is the most ironic statement in real estate. There are agents that just don't answer their phone.
Oh my God.
They
Kendra,
don't answer their phone. And that's going down a rabbit hole that we don't want to go down right now. Mark and I don't need that rabbit hole. So they just don't. So texting them honestly is more beneficial, and they'll read their text. They won't even read their emails. People won't read their emails from title, from their escrow officers when they're about to close. So hey. Anyways,
well,
that's
I think that goes back to what I was saying, as far as we live in a world where we are in information and email and marketing overload. And we know when we're being marketed to, and we see right through that. Like, we've got that third sense, sixth sense, whatever the saying is, where we know when it's not, I don't know if legitimate is the right word, if it's not sincere would be the right word. And man, I had a whole train of thought I was going to go to. You got me on the phone calls. And so I don't know. JR, I saw the gears were turning over there on your end. So, and we're also, I guess, approaching that 15-minute cutoff. So I want to bring JR back in. Brian, I don't know if you have any other questions on your list that we haven't touched upon. So I think we should be able to get a couple more in if we'd like.
Well, one question I just want to know your guys' opinion on what is the one reason for failure of strategic partnerships?
Oh, that's easy. That's really, really easy. It's lack of communication all day, every day. It dies on the vine if you haven't communicated recently. That's all there is to it.
Well, it's not just recently either, right? Because
sure.
If we have a partnership going on, a lot of the time we have people that we need, our clients that we need to be communicating about. And if we're not even willing to do that, then that says a lot more about that partnership or lack thereof. That's right.
And so, and there was the gears you had me rolling on, and and this is something I've been trying to formulate for a second. And brother, this is the most important thing for guys like you and me. Have this down so that way you can get your thoughts out while they're fresh. But it's like, does it scale? That's the next thing. Because as your business grows, you're limited to a certain number of people, right? How many people can you personally touch and give that level of attention to? And that is one of those things that I always, in any of my businesses, it goes, okay, does it scale? Can I have not just a business that people know me, but eventually I am so inundated with love, value, and all these things that I can then create a company that does amazing things. You know, I looked at my financial services business that I had at the previous firm, and in a short period of time, we grew from just myself and another guy to somewhere in the ballpark of 500 agents in 16 states. And the intentionality required, that then becomes, okay, who do I talk to, when, and how do I set this up to be more automated? For our financial services clients, I constantly am asking and helping them implement things called intentional spending plans. And all that is setting up automation to where you focus on the thing that you're best at, and then push everything else off to automation and things that have to happen but don't drive the needle like what you put your hands on. And so coming back around to it, you go, okay, so what do you do here? How often do you speak with them? And I want to backtrack, and I agree 100%. It's not about frequency so much as rhythm. Like it's not, and that's the balance versus rhythm conversation I have in all time management, because we all get 168 hours. And by the way, I know we all talk about that being a finite resource. Anyone figures out a way to get an extra hour in there, we can market that together, I promise. But take a step back, 168 hours, right? We all have, that's the equal footing and playing ground we all have as entrepreneurs. And so that is a finite resource that then must be intentionally divvied out. And I believe automation has a lot. Like, even if the automation for me is just the automatic reach out. Like, I have a system that will automatically text a certain person after a number of times. And even though I talked to that person the day before, it's always good to touch base and be in front of them. But when it comes to strategic partnerships, setting up the automation is also part of holding yourself accountable to being the person you said that you were going to be for them. And so I think it's multifaceted, brother. And I think you're right that it's not just about like, let me just set a reminder every week. I think it goes deeper than that. And it's like, okay, what's my rhythm in this relationship? And so sometimes the rhythm sounds like smooth jazz and sometimes the rhythm sounds like death metal. But I think the rhythm is more achievable than the balance, if that makes sense.
And I think what you just mentioned with what you were bringing to the fold earlier in the discussion with as much as we are all capable of doing by ourselves, we can go much further together. And looking at your team building and really both your employees and your potential bosses, for the employees or the entrepreneurs that are in that beginning of their journey, where those are strategic partnerships, right? And again, having that as if you are looking at a strategic partner and you are able to bring them more business, but then that additional business is going to require additional resources, who is that additional resource that you can now leverage together, right? Because again, we can go far alone, but we can go further together. And so I think those two things that you just mentioned, that's given me something that I need to work on my business. And that's always exciting for me. So man, I see a lot of head shakes on the stage. I think we each have probably talked a lot about this individually, but I feel like we now have a lot more to talk about separately. I see some chats going through in the group text here in the private chat. Brian, bring you back in, man. What do you do?
Yeah, thanks. Lennon, I know this is a topic that we wanted to kick around. If you see it scrolling on the bottom of the screen, how do you show you care?
So most of you that's been around me know I created that acronym for myself several years ago. But we all talk about, when people ask, why should I do business? Well, because I care. Well, that's easy for everybody to say, but how do you demonstrate you care? And so when I created that, basically the C stands for communicate. You've got to be able to communicate well. You've got to be accessible. If you're not accessible, if people are trying to communicate with you and they can't reach you, Kendra, you're talking about real estate agents that don't answer phones. What does that say? If you're not accessible, do you care? You obviously didn't care about that phone call. So, and the next one, are you reliable? Do you do what you say you're going to do? And then the final one, and I'm not sure that it's more important than the other three, but it's very important, is be engaged. Okay. Your level of engagement, though, if you communicate, you're accessible, you're reliable, and you're engaged, that shows you care. And no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Well, shit, man, I didn't know you were a prophet. That was fire right there. I haven't heard that one, London. I don't know what you said. You've been talking about it.
You were asleep in class, Mark.
You're holding out on me.
You weren't listening, Mark. I've heard him say that.
Out on me.
I think we need to get some T-shirts with that slogan put on it. Just get on that.
I didn't know you were a prophet one.
One of London's.
Londonisms.
No, I like the prophet idea better.
No, I love that actually. The communicate, accessible, reliable, and engaging. And what that says to me, communication, obviously we talked a whole bunch about that, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. Accessible. I think I missed the first call from Mark today. And that's just because I was in the shower. Thanks, bud. And I would have answered if I could have reached the phone. Reliable. And you said something, Lyndon, that is like a factor that has been driving me since I was very first introduced to the concept of business, which is integrity, is doing what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, even if no one else is going to find out you're doing it. Right. And that reliability is massive, because then engaging, and the word I have for engaging is always intentionality. And so I love that so much, and that's something I'll take with me forever. Thank you for that.
And it's kind of funny that engaging comes at the end of that, because if you're communicating accessible and reliable, you are engaged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can't have engagement if you don't have those other three.
That's a great point. All right, we're going to get the care T-shirts made. That's
Like
our next order of business.
All right.
I think one of us has a vendor for that.
Maybe a fanny pack or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, if there isn't already, I'll make one.
Awesome. Well, guys, we are coming up against it as far as the time goes. Lennon, thanks for that ad on the CARE acronym. I think that's a great ad, and I think we've hit a lot of these things really well today. So, JR, thanks for coming on the show again, man. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better. You had a lot of great things to add, so we appreciate that. Mark and Kendra, again, thank you for another great show of co-hosting. Appreciate you guys. Lennon, appreciate you running the ship behind the scenes here, even though we couldn't see you today. But once again, guys, thanks for another great show. Have a wonderful holiday long weekend. Be safe out there. And we will see you guys next Thursday, same time, 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time. See you guys.